Okay, so what we've got here is there's a couple of things on at the moment. Before I get into it, is make sure that you sign up for the strategy summit. You would have got an invite to that. So for our LYD strategists, which you guys are, it's free, but look, for $99, it just covers our administrative costs. For doing CPD, you get effectively 11 CPD points, which really you can't. I mean, you can't really beat that under any stretch of the imagination. So, what does that work out? Probably about $8 a CPD hour. So, and that's effectively a quarter of your CPD, and because it will be across Ian, it will be across professionalism, ethics, and also corporate as well. So we will spread it and break it down. And you'll actually see, if you have a look at the conference, one of the reasons we're having a conference is that there's not a huge amount of technical input there. It's a lot of the other stuff. So that, by the end of July, or certainly by the time we finish, we're well and truly planted ahead of the pack in terms of our CPD. The other one is watch out for, if you can make the session on Thursday. I'm going to be doing a analysis of a discretionary trust versus a leading member trust versus a family protection trust versus an SMSF testamentary trust or SMSF death benefits trust. So we'll have a look at each one of those and see where it fits in. So it'll be a really good session. So make sure those in your diary. And I think also on Thursday afternoon, I've got my top 7 strategies for year end, but that's just really going to be a replay of one we had a couple of weeks ago. So you probably don't need to go and see that. You can just jump onto the site and have a look. Anyway, so I've got from Tony. So thank you very much for Tony. If I miss something, please let me know, and then we'll go through. So I get these sort of questions all the time. In fact, I had a very interesting question only a couple of days ago around an instalment contract purchase for the transfer of SMSF to for the transfer of an SMSF, shares from an individual into an SMSF over a 5-year period, and it was $100,000 each year, obviously, so that it could be non-concessional, which I thought was quite interesting. And then had to look through whether it was a borrowing, whether NALI applied, and all that. So to start at the start, we need to have a look at g'day Kush, how are you? What we need to do is have a look at all the relevant information, and then start to go down to the particular issues. So let's just go through. So these sessions will come in every Tuesday. So we're still working out exactly how to do it. We'll probably be able to do this up on the website, on the I Love SMSF site. But in the meantime, you can just get the link from Sophia each week. So I want to limit it only to 20. Anyway, so what we've got from Tony, I have a paraplegic client now, 40 years old. So that's less than the preservation age. And so I don't need to go to the legislation for that one. He'll continue to meet the TPD condition for the rest of his life. And that's one area that we need to look at, because for the TPD perspective of his, there's difference between a TPD, perhaps insurance policy, versus what's required in the SIS Act. But what we will do is we'll go and have a look at where we basically sit there. So he's in the pension phase for the majority of his funds, which is great. Virtually tax-free retirement income stream, given the length of time to his actual retirement date. So remember, we looked at that for temporary incapacity, that future service element versus the total service days. If you remember, we went through that process. So it's exactly the same way, one for the pension. And likewise, much the same as your total, also temporary incapacity, a permanent incapacity pension will also be tax deductible. So remember, we had a look at that, or partially tax deductible. So it's a pretty good thing, but of course, it's not much fun to try and get condition of release being a paraplegic. His TPD was at age 34. So if we have a look at his future service days versus his total service days, he's probably, let's say it's, age 20 up to 34 up to 65. It's probably around about 18 or probably 20% or thereabouts. Here's that future service element, so that and what you do is that that element there is obviously going to be tax-free and tax deductible to the fund. So it's not a bad little thing. Okay, so now this is the big one. He's since returned back to work and is in an accumulation phase as well. So obviously he's getting SGC from those contributions, I'm presuming there, Tony. I'm wondering if this would be a good training session tomorrow. Yes, it would. We would want to roll back to accumulation and then refresh his account-based pension. So what effect will this have on the current tax-free status? And when we have a look at that of his income stream, where does he sit with TTR? Obviously hasn't met preservation age, so TTR doesn't fit in there. So what we've got there is we've got an amount that has started, and now he's gone back to work and he's putting more contributions. So the issue is, do we roll back and consolidate? And what impact would that have on that pension? Or do we actually go ahead and build two pensions, or are we able to build two pensions? So what we need to do is we need to obviously go to the deed first. But suffice to say that the deed that I've written covers permanent incapacity income stream, covers everything. So there's really no great shape to have a look at it. The big one that we did consider, of course, with the temporary incapacity, which is probably to a lesser extent with a permanent incapacity, because obviously at age 40, that income stream he's building can go until age 65 or even longer, hopefully, until the account runs out. So again, the same way we did with temporary incapacity, our income stream can be paid from his account if it's all unpreserved benefits, and we'll have a look at that. And also can include earnings and also allocations from reserves, which isn't a bad thing to think of. So let's start at the start. And so for that, we need to have a look at the regulations. Now, I've got here some payment standards, and to tell you the truth, they're bloody hopeless, really, and it just shows you the quality of the stuff or APRA looking after retail industry funds. I mean, this is the payment standard guide, and seriously, it's the biggest load of dross you've ever seen. And you can understand why, when we make applications to retail industry funds, particularly death benefits, essentially why it takes so long, because there's nothing in here. There's no technical stuff. You can see, go and have a look at it, but we talk about the risk management framework seriously, and they talk about illegal early release. Now, there's nothing on temporary incapacity, obviously, and there's nothing on permanent incapacity. But I did want to just give you a bit of a heads up on this retirement condition of release, because it does relate collaterally to where we're going for. And I think this is pretty important, because this is, again, how industry and retail funds assess it, and of course, the same with the self-managed. So if you have a look at the ATO guidelines on preservation, they really mirror this. But I wanted to just go through it in a bit of detail, so because I found it, and I think it's something that we'll need to be necessarily aware of when we're dealing with clients. So the CIS regulations include two alternative age-related definitions of retirement, and that's in Regulation 1.067. So the first definition of retirement applies where a member has reached their preservation age, and this is less than 60. In these events, the member's retirement occurs when an arrangement under which the member's gainful employees come to an end, and the licensee is reasonably satisfied the member intends never again to become gainful employed on a part-time or full-time basis, which is okay. It's easy to hoodwink the RSC or the industry and retail funds. A bit harder when you're in your own self-managed super fund. Now, the second one applies when a member has reached age 60. In these circumstances, a member's retirement is considered to occur if an arrangement under which the member was gainfully employed has come to an end on or after the member attained the age of 60. So that's fairly important. I just want to go down a little bit further. So I've marked it up here. So paragraph 22, where a member has reached the age of 60, is in 2 or more employment arrangements at the same time, and ceases, and it could be any, it could be part-time, anything, and ceases one of these employment arrangements, this is a valid condition of release in respect of all preserved and restricted non-preserved benefits accumulated up until that time. So when we get that condition of release, effectively it means all those benefits are effectively what we call unrestricted non-preserved. So for that, that's essential that really, as soon as someone turns age 60, whether they're working or not, get them out working, or they're a director of a trustee company or anything, as long as you can show that there's some gainful employment. And for that, you might just want to put in a bit of super on their behalf. Once they work, effectively, they are deemed to be retired, which is important. Now, like this case, but also for many of our clients, they may trigger that at age 60. And it's absolutely important at age 60 to trigger that, because if you fail to trigger that, then any growth on that underlying amount from age 60, or when that deemed retirement starts, any growth, when you ultimately trigger that, is going to then be assessed for your T-bar. So the whole idea at age 60 is to simply get it in, throw it over to pension, and then you're off and running. John, absolutely. So self-employment would also be the case, and I'll have a look at that one as well. So when we go down, but it's a bit harder to show, for example, self-employment if we've got, for example, we're trading shares. It's a lot easier to get contributions on that basis, but to actually say, well, we'll stop that, particularly if it's in the self-managed
employment. It's the outside employment I'm referring to ceases and the self-employment continues.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can, so the question there from, or the issue from John, which is correct, is that if the outside one ceases, self-employment, absolutely. So you can still contribute and get a tax deduction for it. Now, what we have to do is play around with both. So let's say that we've met age 60, just following what John was saying, is the client has ceased. They've got $500,000 in their superannuation fund. As soon as the trustee of the fund, which is themselves anyway, receives that notification that they've ceased gainful employment, then at that point in time, all their restricted and their preserved benefits, as is seen in paragraph 22, all become unrestricted non-preserved, which means we can then go and start a pension. So my recommendation for clients would be starting a pension. In fact, the first thing a good advisor should be doing is, once someone turns 60, give them a bottle of champagne and then get them to go out and cease work in one way, shape or form. Now, with the gainful employment, so we're self-employed or whatever, we're making contributions, we're getting deductions, all of that sort of stuff. Now, what happens is, for those contributions, however, it is APRA's views that this will not change the character of any preserved or restricted non-preserved benefits that accrue after the condition of release has occurred. A member will not be able to cash any further benefits or investment earnings accrued from another existing employment arrangement, or any benefits or investment earnings from a new employment arrangement. So what that means is we put our stake in the ground, that's unrestricted non-preserved, and then any new employment or contributions going in will be considered to be preserved benefits. As a consequence of that, then we're going to meet another condition of release, which really is, again, we could go out and get another job and then terminate that one, or importantly, retire full-time, or alternatively wait until age 65. And that's going to become pretty important when we get back into our stuff. So I'm flicking from there. Now I'm in the CIS Regs Part 2. So what happens is Section 30 and 31 of the CIS Act provide that there can be operating standards provided by government in the regulations. And so what happens is, all the mechanisms, when we look at this sort of stuff, the mechanisms of stuff you always find in the regulation, how to do this, how to do that. Now, for that, the preservation rules, which we'll look at a little bit later on potentially, are contained in Part 6 of the CIS regulations. Payment standards, remember we looked at minimum benefits in the temporary incapacity last week. and effectively they are in Part 5. Now, all the tables for minimum pensions, the payments in relation to preservation are found in Part 2, so SysRegs Part 2. So what I'm going to do down here, you can see here, Schedule 1, conditions of release of benefits, which we'll look at shortly. The other one that's pretty important, obviously, is Schedule 7, which is your minimum pension payment for a super income stream, which we're not going to do it. In fact, I don't know, sometimes I just shake my head at the media, and I just think these people are so dumb, and they just love putting fear upon fear. There was an article in the ABC this morning, it was in their online, and it said that they interviewed this lady who was on a pension, and she was so shocked that her pension, this is a private pension, so it's not the age pension, that her private pension was going to be reduced by half. Now, of course, it's not going to be reduced by half. A minimum pension payment is going to be reduced by half. And mind you, they go on later and say, well, she can actually withdraw down whatever she wants, but she was absolutely shocked, whereas I would have thought 90% of all retirees who are in the pension phase, hi, Bill, how are you? I would have thought 90% of people who are in the pension phase would have been absolutely happy that there's been a discount on or 50% discount on their pension standards. So that applies not only this year, but also next year as well. So anyway, let's have a look at the conditions of release of benefits. So we saw there item 101, retirement. So when there's a nil, that means it's all unrestricted, non-preserved, so we can take it as a pension or we can take it as a lump sum. So that just simply means that's a trigger. We meet retirement, cashing restrictions are nil, so therefore it becomes all unrestricted, non-preserved. Now, item 103, permanent incapacity, is also nil as well. So I've taken you to the conditions of release of the benefits. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to bounce out of there, and then I'm going to take us into the SysRegs. So you'll see here we've got the SysReg regulations. Just shows you what my life's like. I have these open all the time. So what I want to do is, we've seen there, we've got here all the preliminary meaning of permanent incapacity. So we'll have a look at that first. So that's in 103C, and see what that says. So that's changed a little bit, which is quite useful for us. And I'll go into where we are. So, okay, so 103C. Okay, we'll just pass the defs at the 103A, lost member. 103, okay. 103C, meaning of permanent incapacity. For subsection 10.1 of the Act, a member of a superannuation fund, so that includes a SMSF or an ADF, I don't think there's anything left, is taken to be suffering in permanent incapacity if a trustee of the fund is reasonably satisfied that the member's ill health, whether physical or mental, makes it unlikely that the member will engage in gainful employment for which the member is reasonably qualified by education, training, or experience. Now, when we go through that, and let's just focus in on that, in order to meet the condition of release being permanent incapacity, it's a trustee decision. So it's important for us as advisors to make sure that we get the decision right, because the last thing we want is to get early release or illegal early release, or be involved in that. And likewise, if we get it wrong and we get pinged, or the client gets pinged for the release, then section 54C and 55.3 potentially enables the client to have an action against us. So let's just go through. So first off, the first thing is that it's the trustee of the fund has to be satisfied, as opposed to going to the tax office. There has to be ill health. And remember, we had a look at that last week, temporary incapacity. The fact I've got a broken leg, and which is a physical ill health, if I was off work for a week or two, as soon as I break my leg, I can get temporary incapacity from my superannuation fund, remember, and that is from my SGC, any salary sacrifice of my employer above SGC, which is again a reason why we should be salary sacrificing as much as we can for temporary incapacity, reserves, and also earnings of the fund if you don't have reserves. Ill health is mental as well, so if we've got anxiety, we can't work, then we fit in that one. But here is the thing, is it makes it unlikely that the member will engage in gainful employment for which the member is reasonably qualified by education, training, or experience. So that really opens it up and really says, well, effectively, it's everyone. So if you're never going to again engage in gainful employment, then effectively you meet permanent incapacity. So if we go back to our issue here, quite clearly the client at age 34 received the nod that effectively they were totally and permanently disabled. And now the issue around that one is what's happened is they've actually gone back to work. So whatever they had in the system at that point in time effectively would have been treated as unrestricted non-preserved. So once it's in the system, it's unrestricted non-preserved and will always have that demeanour. The same way investment earnings on that will always be unrestricted non-preserved. So if we're in the pension phase, unrestricted non-preserved, we take that out and we put it into the accumulation phase. That componentry is unrestricted non-preserved, and earnings built on that are also unrestricted non-preserved. Now, the issue that we've got here, Tony, is that he's gone back to work, and the fact that he's gone back to work, it means from here on in, the same way, if I have a look at that APRA guideline, remember we had a look at their guideline? They met a condition of release being retirement. So therefore, all of the benefits are restricted, both preserved and restricted non-preserved are unrestricted non-preserved. However, if he continues to work, or in this instance, because he's gone back to work, I would say that effectively, it's the trustee can't make obviously can't make a decision that the member will engage, has not engaged in gainful employment. Quite clearly, they're engaged in that gainful employment. So what we've got is the disparity there is that we've got that existing pension going down the track, but when he goes back and he's gone back to work, and whether it's probably under NDIS or something, and he's getting an income from that, and that income also gets super, those super contributions going into the fund are effectively going to be treated as preserved benefits. Now, like the same thing is that, as I said, with that retirement, we need to meet another condition of release. If he becomes sick again, and again, the trustee is satisfied he's not going to be able to engage in gainful employment, again, then those preserved benefits will then become unrestricted non-preserved. So, Tony, what I would be doing is, from that perspective, is you're going to have to end up with two. I would keep the income stream going, and then for the new amounts, allocate that into the accumulation account. Obviously, he can't, because he doesn't meet permanent incapacity. He may, if we go down the track and he becomes temporarily incapacitated, then the SGC we can't take out, but anything over and above the SGC we can. More importantly, he's going to have to hold those until he meets retirement. And given his age, TTR, winds up at age 60 anyway. So for his perspective, he'd be better off waiting to age 60 to then commence, obviously, a brand new pension if it's available there. Now, hopefully that makes a bit of sense there, Tony. Okay, so that's sort of the way to look at that one. Has anyone got any other questions for me? Please feel free to ask me questions. That's what it's here. Does his paraplegia make the difference as it is permanent incapacity? Paraplegia is permanent incapacity, but the problem we're facing is when we have a look here at the definition of permanent incapacity. So what you and I would, so for example, what you and I would consider as being retirement would not marry up with what John was talking about before, whereby we leave work, we're retired, but he's still in gainful employment as self-employed. We would say, well, hold on, he's not retired. Same thing as we can have a doctor who's a locum over age 60, still has a very successful practice, gives up the locum post age 60, he's retired at that time, but then he continues on at work. Same thing here is we have to stick to the definition. When we have a look at that, it's going to be the trustee, although he is a paraplegic, he's actually engaged in gainful employment. And so because you're engaged in gainful employment, you can't meet that permanent incapacity as we stand under the SIS regulations, unfortunately. Because he is gainfully employed, you can't say that it's unlikely Ben will engage in gainful employment because he's already gainfully employed. So unfortunately, that's the case. Of course, if he wants to take his money out under the $10,000 rule, coming up to 30 June, I would say that would definitely be one particular strategy around that one. Any other questions?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I was going to make the observation that many of our clients are self-employed as well as being employed. In a rural area, many of our clients, including myself, have farming operations at varying scales.
Yep.
So many of our clients end their employment in multiple occupations, but continue to want to live on or operate small grazing businesses. So the process of retiring from gainful employment independently enables them to fall back to their farming occupation or their, dare I say, hobby, to continue to be employed, albeit
Yeah, definitely. So with that one is what I've always said with the farming is that even if you just engage in the farm, because most people, I mean, your typical one, you'd have have your family wherever the farm is, whether it's in SMSF, but you've got your family trust and you may well be employed there. Just ceasing work for that is probably problematic because you want to continue on working. Right. However, you can go down to the local pub or somewhere, work for a little bit of time after age 60, or just go and share crop or do some work on a mate's farm post age 60. And once you cease work, again, just have something meaningful, reasonably meaningful, then in those circumstances, you would be classified as meeting that retirement condition of release, which is pretty important. You're going? So there was, we're just going to be very careful about it. There was, it's quite interesting, there was a very famous case, Herod's case, I think back in the 90s, where a financial planner had put one of his clients on the books so that she could continue to make contributions. That was in the days of the 2-year rule, so that we're looking long way back. But effectively, at that point in time, he ended up getting, of course, he put them on the books, he invested the money, and as a consequence of that, that was in the, I think, 93, 94, when we had that bond market, and remember the equities crash after the recession, and she lost quite a bit of money, sued the employer, sued the advisor, and effectively won the case because what had happened is he had, had been involved in subterfuge around that sort of payment. So anyway, we're just going to be very careful about that side of things. What I might do is, while I'm here, we might as well flow in and, of course, let's have a look at the permanent incapacity. And remember, we had a look at this last week. Let's go and have a look at what happens from a tax perspective. So I'll just go down to the tax side of things. So so I'll just go down to 300, which is taking the monies out, and then I'll come back and I'll have a look at the deduction side and the pension. Well, actually, I might as well have a look at it here while we're here. In terms of the tax deduction for the fund. So this is the tax exemption. Remember, we had a look at the tax deduction last week. So deductions for death or disability benefits. So again, we've got here, and this is pretty important. So a superannuation death benefit or a disability superannuation benefit. Now for that, I need to look at section 995, which I don't have that in here. So let me just do that. Disability superannuation benefit section 995. Again, I mean, if you want to do something, you have to actually look at the legislation. So I'm coming from a reputable source, so that's actually the legislation.gov.au. If I have a look here, First State Super, that is not although they call themselves a super oracle, it's probably super crap if you ask me. The only way you're going to find okay, so the only way you're going to find the stuff is to actually have a look at the real legislation. So I'd get the normal one, but it's just going to take me too long. So, well, that doesn't help me at all. So that's not what I want, maybe. Have a look down here. Section 995. Let me just have a look. Sorry about this, guys. Just, again, if it was in a book, it's very easy. Okay, so OSLI is another one. So OSLI is where you get all your cases, so on and so forth. So we want to have a look at a disability superannuation benefit. So there we go. So a disability, and this is, you can actually see this as a wee bit different from what we saw before. A disability superannuation benefit means a superannuation benefit. So that would be, in this instance, because we've got an early release, we can take a lump sum or an income stream either way. But to get the tax side of things, we'll look at very shortly. The benefits paid to an individual because he or she suffers from ill health, whether physical or mental, and notice the difference here. Two legally qualified medical practitioners have certified that because of their health, it is unlikely that the individual can ever be gainfully employed in a capacity for which he or she is reasonably qualified because education, experience or training. So that's a little bit different than when we have a look at the other one here, where we had a look at our CIS regs, which said that the trustee has to determine it's reasonably satisfy the member's ill health, makes it unlikely that the member will engage in gainful employment. So that's okay. It's very easy to turn it to unrestricted, non-preserved. The issue is if we want to take part of it out as tax-free and then get all the disability stuff, then what we need to do is we need to actually show that two legally qualified medical practitioners have certified because of ill health is unlikely can ever be gainfully employed for capacity which he or she is reasonably qualified because of education, experience or training, which might make it very difficult in Tony's case that because the client has gone back and been gainfully employed, if sometime down the in 3 or 4 years' time, it'd have to degenerate quite significantly in order to get some more medical practitioners. But again, that's just the issue. So if we go ahead and have a look at the tax side of things, so back in the super tax, so I'm jumping into there. So disability super benefit, we need to get 2 doctors in relation to that. Remember under C, we looked at that, there was under the temporary incapacity. So deductions for insurance premiums, obviously you're going to get a tax deduction for the TPD. So that's obviously that's given. The other one that we want to look at is the complying funds, deductions for future liability to pay benefits. Remember, we looked at that around temporary capacity, each of the payments themselves. I'm going to show you exactly what happens for this one. Each of the payments themselves, some portion of it during the year would be tax deductible. So if we have a look here, a complying fund can deduct an amount under this section for an income year if the trustee makes a choice under subsection 295-465(4), which is essentially that they're not claiming a deduction for insurance premiums for the year. And the trustee pays a benefit referred to in A, which is the case. Remember, the disability benefit was B, for the income year in consequence of the termination of the member's employment. The amount of the fund can deduct is the benefit amount times the future service days on total service days. So remember, we had a look at that one that Tony put out, that effectively he was age 34 when he had that paraplegic event. Future service days was quite significant, so that would have been 31 years over a potential 45-year period if he started at 20. So looking at my handy old calculator sitting on my phone, I'm sure most of you guys could probably, you're probably laughing when you do this on your heads, I'm sure Milton can do that. So calculator, so 30, so we had 34, so 31 divided by 45, so that's 68%. So 68% is the correlative factor there. Now, so what we've got here is 2 aspects. So where we become permanently incapacitated, we might take an amount out of the fund in order to, fix up the house, pay off a mortgage or whatever. Now, if you take that out, then let's say it's $100,000. So the benefit amount is going to be $100,000 times 68.88. So $68,888 would be tax deductible to the fund. Now, what Tony said is, hold on, what we've done is we've put this into an income stream. So what we've got here is for a benefit that is a superannuation income stream, it's the value of the superannuation income interest supporting the income stream. So again, it's the same sort of thing as the lump sum. So again, if we put over $500,000 into a pension, so a pension to pay that permanent incapacity, then effectively the fund will get a tax deduction of 68.88% of that 500, or just over probably about $320,000. Well, in fact, probably a little bit more than that. So that's how it works in there. Now we have to go down to the section 307 or section 300. We'll just go.
Sorry, Grant.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got here late. Mate, so you're saying you set up a pension amount, and that can come from a reserve?
Yes, so again, you can set it up and it can come from a reserve, but again, that would be a concessional contribution unless you meet one of those, there's exemptions in, is it 292-25.01 4B, I think, or 4B. So you remember the ones for the pension. So that could be, that's on death, commutation, or replenishment. Otherwise, it's going to be treated as a concessional contribution, which isn't, it's not a bad thing if you're going to go down and do that, because if a person's permanently incapacitated, then all you do is you drop down the cap each and every year. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you just pull it out each. It should get, if you've got reserves in there and you've got a client that's permanently incapacitated, And even if they're temporarily incapacitated, remember that temporary incapacity can last from age 20 up to age 65.
Yep.
But what you do is you just say, okay, well, if they're incapacitated, we're going to drop down 25 each and every year. Or depending on what the tax is, because if the permanent incapacity stuff is coming out mainly tax-free, then you probably want to go up a little bit higher, because what will happen is you can extend it a bit further, because remember, anything over the 25 is going to be added back to their assessable income.
Right.
But if they don't have any assessable income, you've seen me, like, for example, the classic one that I'll be doing this year for myself is, and then I've got to sit down and do the numbers because I'm over age 60. So I've stopped my salary for obviously under LightYear docs, and I'm just holding it and I'm waiting for it to be paid in June. Now, what will happen there is what I'll do is I'll look at where my tax position is this year. I'll obviously put the 25 in, but I'll go above the 25, and knowing that that excess will be added back to my assessable income, but I'm going to get a 15% tax offset for it, if that makes sense. So if I had no other PAYG income, then effectively I'll be in a position, I think it's around about $70,000 I can take out each year. But I'm going to have to do the numbers, because what I'll do is if I look as though I'm going to pay too much tax, then I'll actually put some of it into reserve, allocate it to next year, and then from next year it'll drop down, then form part of that concessional contribution next year.
Grant, you said that you were going to pay, you haven't been taking a salary, but you'll take one in June.
Yeah.
That gives you income, and yet when you put in excess concessional contribution, that's going to go on top of that salary. Isn't that the purpose?
Yeah, so no, because what will happen, so there's two ways of looking at that, and this is pretty important coming up on the 30 June. So the first way is I haven't been taking salary because I'm salary sacrificing. So salary sacrifice since January. So that'll go into my superannuation fund. So there hasn't been any PAYG, there hasn't been anything else, and so on and so forth. So for me, that's the way it would play out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay. So
or the alternative I could do would be that if I've got the cashola, let's say that I have gone through that process, and this year's a really funny year, because if I've gone through that process and I've paid PAYG, then what will happen is, you get the firm, and I think we're looking at doing that, the firm will get the cash bonus, for the PAYG. But then what will happen is if I got the cash, it then goes into super. But remember we looked at last week, you can get a tax deduction under section 290, 160, or I think it's 160, I'm not sure anyway, for personal contributions, which will have the same impact as well. And what it'll mean is I get a deduction, so then I'll have to lodge my return virtually in the first few weeks of July to get that money back.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But then I've still got to do my analysis of working out this year and next year to work out which is where my cutoff is as to how much goes up into a contributions suspense account. And quite often, if you had a look at it, because the cash is going to be a problem, what would you do, Milton? If I've got a cash problem, sorry?
Use your promissory note.
Yeah, so I'd use my promissory note. And then effectively what I would do is, because that's a cash equivalent, when I get the tax refund from the commissioner, then I can put that back in, and I put the promissory note in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so...
Or I can actually put it back in, and then I can draw it back out as a pension if I wanted to.
Yeah, that's right. And so what you're really saying is that in your contribution suspense account, you could put $70,000 or $100,000 in there.
Correct. Yes. Correct.
Yeah.
What I'll have to do is I'm just going to have to, I can do that. And remember, I think, did I have a look at that? Or I had a look at that from that case. So if I put in a lot in there, then I can make a lot of it obviously non-concessional and stuff like that. So again, I one of the big things for me is, particularly if you're dealing with someone like myself, permanent incapacity, temporary incapacity, the caps are virtually meaningless, which again goes to that that theorem, is that if we can get older members of the family, particularly when we're looking at farming clients, if we can keep them on the books up until age 75, bearing in mind that from the 1st of July, obviously the work test drops off for the people over age 67. So if we can just keep them in the books, then, and again, I mean, let's face it, farmers are going to be working at least, doesn't matter, they're never retired, so they're going to be working 40 hours over a 30-day period anyway. So you got them up until age 75, and it works out around about 70 grand a year. So you've got mum and dad, and there's no correlation between the contribution and the work that's involved for that one. So let's go here. Benefits for age under preservation age, and we're looking at 301-40. And this is quite interesting actually when we have a look at this. And I'm just being a bit of a. It's nice to have these sort of sessions where I can shoot the breeze. And again, I'd encourage you next. Week, if you've got any questions, much the same as Tony did, to effectively send me some information. So again, we're looking here, remember, benefits under preservation age, if you could take them out, which is very unlikely. But if you could take them out anyway, the taxable component is taxed at 20%. Now, in theory, that $10,000 that people could take out of their fund, or all the, what has there been, 2 million people who have been pillaging it. I wish it was up to 10 million and that would decimate the guys. But if you have a look at $10,000, so the condition of release there is, again, they've met that compassionate ground, and that's COVID, etc. In theory, 301-35 would apply, and it should be taxed at 20%. Yeah. But they've given a, not in here, but in the COVID rules, it's basically tax-free. So that's why that $10,000 and also the $10,000 coming up from July is so important. Now, when we get down to here, if you're under age preservation age when you receive a super income stream benefit, the taxable component of the benefit is assessable income. But, and this is the important one, so remember again, we've got 2 legally qualified medical practitioners. If the benefit is a superannuation income stream benefit and a disability super benefit, you're entitled to a tax offset equal to 15%. So that's a pretty good deal that we're looking at from that perspective. That's if they're under the preservation age. Now, the other side of the coin, of course, is, which is the one, if you are under your preservation age when you receive a super benefit, the tax-free component. So it's only the taxable component, which is included in your assessable income, but you get a 15% tax offset. Now, if I just go down to, I think it's 307. So just go down and we'll have a look at when we pay out that income stream, how much of it is tax-free. Okay, so just bear with me on this one. So I'm a bit rusty on this sort of stuff. I just wanted to show you, again, when we come to these sessions, don't expect to be like glossy. This is exactly how I work. So I sort of know where things are, but I don't know where things, well, I do know where they are, but I'm just digging around here. If it's in my book, I'd be a lot easier here. So the key concepts relating to superannuation benefits. So we looked at that last week about whatever. So what we want to do is, so let's go down components. So super benefits generally, which we looked at, so that includes income streams, includes lump sums. What I'm trying to do is determine my tax-free, which I'm pretty sure is a little bit further. Payments are not super benefits. Remember, we looked at that temporary incapacity. superannuation lump sum, superannuation income stream. So that's okay. So we know that. You'll see these are the terms that we pick up all the time. Okay. So when a superannuation income stream is in retirement phase, so that's for your TBA. So that obviously is permanent capacity. So that's not a bad one, because obviously anything over and above that that's growth on that permanent capacity effectively is a T-bar amount. So probably that's another thing, Tony, that I'd probably be reticent about doing is, oh no, you roll the back commutation, you'd end up with an extra amount. So it's not a bad idea. Anyway, so let me go on. Let me find that last little bit. So components. So the tax-free. So the tax-free component. Proportioning rule, which applies for pensions. And I think there's a little one here at the end. Fingers crossed here that I may come up to it. I'm sure it's right at the very end. Okay, there you go. So I knew it was there. Modifications for disability benefits. You work out the tax-free component of a superannuation benefit under subsection 2 if the benefits are superannuation lump sum and a disability superannuation benefit. So it has to be a lump sum. The tax-free components is the sum of the tax-free component of the benefit worked out apart from this section, and that's obviously whatever, and the amount worked out under subsection 3. However, the tax-free component cannot exceed the amount of the benefit. So work out the amount by applying the following formula. The amount of the benefit, days to retirement on service days plus days of retirement, which is your future service period, so on. So for us, it's 68.8%. So for the client here, where we're taking a lump sum, if it was $500,000, it's the same. It correlates because 68.8% of it is tax deductible to the fund, but 68.8% of it is also going to be tax free. And any amount over and above that is obviously taxed at 20%. Now, I wonder, I'm not sure what happens with income streams. Let me just go back up. I think it only applies to lump sums, unfortunately. Yeah, it looks as though it only applies to lump sums on that one for pension, because with the pension stuff, they get that 15% tax offset, which is the relevant amount there. I'm pretty sure. But look, let me come back to you on that one. I'll, if I find the section, I'll just write a note to it when I send out the this recording for you. So proportional rule. Okay, so that's it. I'll do a little bit more research, but I think I'm pretty sure that's it again. Anyway, that's today's session. So again, we'll go through this process next week. It'd be nice to do some property or property development questions. Preservations are nice, but it's pretty boring. Death benefit ones are like wills. If you've got a client that you'd like me to draft up a will for, that you think's a bit tricky, so that way I can actually show you how to use the system and also give you the clauses that I would do. Please feel free to send those in. And again, if you'd like to get on this next week, just have a chat with Sophia and she'll book you in and take it from there.
I'll send you a couple of will scenarios, Grant.
Yep, that'd be great. If you want to, so I'll leave it up to you, John. So you've got the chair next week. So you send me a couple of will scenarios. I'll have a look through them and then I'll go through building the documents, which is important because what we've effectively done here, I'm not sure you guys would have seen the temporary incapacity, but what we've done here is we've gone through the stuff. We know the strategy, but we need to get the documentation to get it all. So we did. I rebuilt that temporary incapacity. It was funny because you saw me do that in last week's session.
Yeah.
I know, and within 3 hours, it was sitting in my hub, which is our back end of our system. So that's how quick our system is. and I'll build a permanent incapacity one. But I'd love to definitely, if you've got those, John, to throw the hardest ones at me, and I know you're going to throw the tough ones. And then what I'll do is I'll pull it apart and I'll build it. And that way we can all then learn from that aspect, because we're all, not that we're all new at it, but the more we see it, the more we get involved, the more confident that we're going to be, and the more exciting it's going to be for us and give us a lot of opportunities.
What's new for me, Grant, is that I've come from a history of focusing on testamentary trusts in wills over the last 10 years. And having read your book last night, I've suddenly come up with nuance in relation to having overlooked the merits of SMSF wills.
Yeah.
So I've got a major rewrite to go across a whole bunch of clients where we've got, I mean, in my personal case, I have a testamentary trust which is working extremely well with young grandchildren, etc. A testamentary trust well endowed by my late father, for example, and no risks or problems on the horizon. Not every client can say so confidently that they are safe and secure in that context. And I've set up a lot of, or too many client situations where they've got testamentary trusts being the primary strategy, I suppose, from a succession estate planning perspective.
Yeah, there was, I saw an article this morning that was quite interesting. A very famous QC died, leaving an estate of $30 million. And here I'm going to make a call now. He left it to 10 recipients, but he left a lot of people out. And I would say on a $30 million estate, that's probably an 8-year court case. And I would say that's easily going to be $10 million of fees, easily. Wow. So everyone to be putting their hand up trying to get what, because what you want to do is latch onto one of the claimants and G them up, because then it'll just go down the tracks. So I can imagine the old shine lawyers will be sniffing around there. But anyway, look, next week we'll do, I'll put it in John's court, and if you could send those to me probably by Friday, so I can so we can sort of do some tweaks around it. But look, thanks for turning up, guys. There will be a CPD point on that one. And make sure that you also log in for that Eventbrite. I think I've got it up here on the screen. So
you got that working now, Grant?
Yeah. So unfortunately, when you went through, what happened is Ash was playing around, because I had it differently, but anyway.
I still couldn't get the $99 one.
There should be early bird. Yeah, so
it wasn't there.
Yeah, so
wasn't there this morning.
Yeah, so if we go through that checkout,
that's all right.
Yeah, and then I think there's a. Oh no, you see where it. Sorry, I see. I stuffed it. Here it says the promo.
You said $99. You said $99 in your email.
Yeah, so it is. So if I go back up, so let me just go leave. If we go into promo code. And then I think what the promo code was.
LYCPD, I think it was.
LYCPD.
Yeah, I think it was.
Okay, so there you go. So there you go. So that takes it down from 99 down. Yep. So that's cool. Yeah, perfect. Okay, guys. Well,
can I ask a quick one before you dismiss?
Yep.
You make reference to, in numerous places, to a spouse being able to be deemed lineal. How and where do you do that?
You actually find that comes out in whether you're doing a family protection trust, whether you are doing a will. And
that question is posed for response, is it?
Yeah, so there's a question there, because everyone starts off if it's a leading member and goes down, so the spouse is always excluded.
Right.
But then it's, do you want to include the spouse?
Thank you. I haven't got that far yet. I'm still entering the system and learning, but I'm on my way. Thank you.
Okay, you'll do that.
Thank you very much. I'll send you something to prep you up for some will questions next week.
Okay. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.
Grant, did you get a chance to have a look at that email I sent you early late last week?
Oh, what was that on?
Oh, it was dealing with a pharmacist aged 72.
Let me just...
Whether they were self-employed or not.
So to come to
11th of June.
Where are you, Milton? Virtual strategy? No.
Right.
Oh, this one?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, sorry. Oh, I should have looked at that. Okay, well, we'll look at it now. I've got no set time, so I've just got to leave in about 20 minutes. Got to go to the eye doctor. Enjoy, blah, 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 blah. We would like to submit 2 questions. Client's age 72 is a partner in a pharmacy partnership with 3 members. So is that a true business partnership?
It's a true partnership.
And so you lodge a partnership return, or?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So one member receives a partner's salary because he physically works on a full-time basis. That's okay. My client does not go to the pharmacy for any reason and derives partnership income. He has access to the financial data on a daily basis, which he accesses only weekly for an hour. Is he self-employed? Then what we need to do, so let's go through the regs again. So what I need to do is go to sys regs and the meaning of gainful employment, which I'm pretty sure is in 6.01. Let me just check. Oh, here we go. So gainful employed means, so that's the first step. Gainful employed means employed or self-employed for gain or reward in any business, trade, profession, vocation, calling, occupation, employment. So it quite easily would fit in there. Now, what I need to do is now. Sorry?
He doesn't even have to work.
No, so it's 7.04. So the question is then, because he's over 70, I need to take us to 7.04, which is, can we get in there? 7.04. So I'm just trying, there we go, 7, that's the divorce. We don't want to get into divorce stuff. Had enough of that in my life. Okay, so 7.04, so he's 72. So in order to make contributions, what we've got there, contributions that are made in respect of the member that are mandated employee contributions, or if the member has been gainfully employed on at least a part-time basis, which is the case, during the financial year which the contributions are made, contributions received on or before the date is 28 days after the end on the member turns age 75. Downsize of contributions, requirements mentioned sub-regulation 1A. Let me just check 1A. Oh, that's a child. There you go.
So you said
child, you can make it
part-time.
Yes, part-time. Let me just check.
You
that's
said
probably
working part-time.
Yeah. I need to have a look at what part-time is. Let me have a look at 7.04. So sorry. I'm just trying to find part-time. So it's usually going to be at the end of this section, as you would expect. Don't worry about that. The definitions. This is also interesting. While we're here, I might as well cover it. A regulated super fund may accept contributions in respect of a member if the trustee is reasonably satisfied the contributions in respect of a period during which, under an item in table 1, the fund may accept the contribution in respect of a member, even though the contribution is actually made after that period. So, for example, if you're age 67 now, and you are generally retired, so from the 1st of July, if you notify the trustee that you are going to make a contribution, you just have to wait on selling a business or a property. You can always, this is like the contribution relation back issue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So part-time, let's hope it's there. No, it doesn't look like it. It's probably going to be in 6.01, sorry.
That's all right.
So 6.01. If you'd only asked this of Dan Butler, they'd probably only charge you $1,000 or $2,000.
I know.
That's crazy, isn't it? And then it'd come with nothing. So let's hope it should be here. No, okay, let me just do something else. Control F. Fine. Where is it? It should be here. Where would it be? Actually, I'll go back to one. See, because we had a look at gainful employment. Has to be one of these big ones. Fingers crossed. Finally, there it is.
Where's that, Grant?
This is like all the big chunky regulations are at 1.03. Things like all the big stuff. So regulation 1.03. The payment standard ones are in 6. 5, and also preservation is 6. Here. So part-time in relation to being gainful employed, which means gainful employed for at least 10 hours and less than 30 hours each week. Now, it used to be for 30 days. I'm just going to go back because it used to be over a 30-day period, but they seem to have changed that.
Yeah.
So let me just go back to 7.04.
So it looks as if he's actually got to be working part-time, even though he is a partner in a partnership, which means he is deriving business income.
Yeah, so regulated may accept contributions, blah, blah, blah. Made. So contributions made in respect of a member of the mandate, or if the member's been gainfully employed on at least a part-time basis during the financial year. So that's changed a lot because it used to be 40 hours over a 30-day period. Now, all you have to do is show that they've been gainfully employed for at least 10 hours for 1 week.
Yeah.
So that's even easier for that one. So his self-employment, as you said, all he has to do is just rock up. He does a bit of work at home, does the accounts. Just log it in for a period. I'd get him, just make sure he's got a log for, maybe a month or so, and that would cover you for that. Yeah.
10 hours for 1 week, and that's all he's got to do, and he's part-time, and you can go. Okay.
If so, then he derives business income, that's fine. But he, obviously can get a tax deduction for it. He can claim there's no work. So if you're able to make a contribution, there's no tests or anything. So you can it's tax deductible. So client age 73. So is this a different client? 73? Yeah.
Yep.
So client age 73 only receives trust distributed dividends, actually meets the work test, but does not get paid remuneration. So you just have to show there that there's gainful employment. And then as a consequence of that, then you're basically okay on that one.
Yeah, but he can't show gainful employment.
Sorry, I'm sure it's my pesky bloody daughter.
So normally speaking, when you receive only just trust income and dividends, right?
Yep.
You can't make a contribution.
Yes, you can. I think what you've got to do is, if you're just doing trust distributions, dividends, but self-employment, if you, like my dad spent a lot of time looking at the shares and trading stocks, and as a consequence of that, what happens there is that would be self-employment itself, because it's gainful employment because you're getting dividends.
Right.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I just need to tailor this one. That's all. Yeah.
You just need to get a logbook out, and then again, they're over age 73, so it's part-time. So just if it's in June, just get them to check for June.
Yeah. So his trust distributions comes from working in a hotel. He owns hotels.
Okay. Yeah. So
he doesn't get remuneration at all, anything other than trust distributions. So
why don't you just pay him a little bit of super out of the fund, out of the trust, because then he'd be employed.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and then he meets gainful employment, and then he can do it down below as well.
Yeah, and that's why the next question: do you have any documentation whereby he starts employment on the 15th of June and salary sacrifice is 25,000 or whatever?
I've got an employment agreement. I know I've got a lot of demand for it, and I'm probably going to have to do it for myself. So leave it with me, and I'll knock something up by the end of this week, and I can send it to you just in a Word doc anyway.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be good, Grant. Thank you.
Okay, guys.
All right. Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Okay. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I was on the, what's the name?
Yeah, I thought you might have been.
I know. So what's up?